friends. Welcome to the Seek Holy Living podcast with Christa Svoboda. I am a wife to my wonderful husband, mom to my 5 precious children, and a friend to some amazing moms that I can't wait to introduce to you. Mothering is not a journey meant to be traveled alone. Join me every Monday for a new podcast where you will find hope, joy, and purpose. I hope you're joining us with a full heart after a beautiful Christmas weekend. We have been treasuring this season with our newest baby. There's something so beautiful about a baby at Christmas. And now we look forward to a new year with our family of 7, with fresh beginnings and new hope. Back with me today are 2 of my dear friends, Alicia Dallas and Stephanie Kamps, both wonderful women who prioritize peace in their hearts and homes. Well, thank you guys so much for being back. Thank you, Stephanie, for coming back again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you, Alicia. I know you were with us just a couple weeks ago, but so good to have you back again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. This will be such a good conversation. I love resolutions. I don't know if it's like, there's the different Enneagram numbers of like types of people. I don't know if it's my 2-ness that like loves the idea of like, okay, let's like have some new exciting things, or maybe like I lean a little 3, so maybe it's the goal setting part of me that thinks like, okay, I can make some new lists and I can do these things. But I love just the newness of the new year, and I think especially coming off of like 2020 is almost over when this airs, like there's something kind of like hopeful about that.
Yeah.
And so thinking about going into a new year, and my tendency being to say, okay, what are all the things that I can do better or that I can do different? And that sometimes all of those thoughts and all those things like puts this new level of like hope in me, but also kind of a burden. And I was thinking about how as the mom that we really set the tone for our homes for everybody, that whether I like it or not. There's that quote, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And I think it's true. If I am in a place where my heart is just not good and I'm just running 100 miles a minute, or I'm just in a place of a burdened or heavy heart, that my whole family feeds off of that. But when I am filled with joy and I am filled with peace and I am filled with hope, then my family feeds off of that. And in some ways, it really seems unfair because I kind of feel like I should be able to be grumpy. And like, I mean, I am, and we have our days for sure.
Right.
But getting to think about intentionally going into this new year, choosing a place of peace. When I think, especially coming off of 2020 being a year that I would say was anything but a year of peace. So how do you think that you as moms see that in your home, that power that you have to create a place of peace for your family?
Yeah. I think for just the idea that I've heard somebody in that same kind of context of if mom ain't happy, nobody's happy, but I heard them talk about how like the mom in the home is like the thermostat. Like she sets the temperature, she sets the mood for the home, and thinking like what a privilege to be that like mood setter, like to think like the way that I respond to my children, or the way that I greet my husband, or the way that I just prepare intentional time at my home really dictates how things end up looking. So, and just thinking about like, I think to think of it as a privilege, that it's like, I get to say like, we are choosing peace in our home.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good point. You have to choose it. It doesn't just come to you.
Yeah.
It's not something that just happens.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good.
And I really like the idea. You're right. I think that we set the tone the way that it is with our husbands, the way it is with our children, that we can kind of set that thermostat. I've heard it said too, being a thermostat, so you're setting the temperature rather than just reading the temperature and responding to it.
Right.
Because sometimes that's our tendency. When everyone, like all of the people get crazy,
right.
If I rise to their level of crazy, then it's just crazy. But if I say like, no, we're not going to do that, and I bring it back down, like I have the privilege, like you said, to do that as well.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Alicia?
Yeah. I think for our house, like what she was saying, like we need to be seeking that, realizing that it's not just going to happen, especially with little ones running around. And that I think on that same level of thinking of a thermostat, I think too, being able to know our family so deeply and so well that we can sense those moments where maybe that one child or that one, your husband, isn't in a place of peace, that I can then sort of counteract that. I'm really thankful that in some of our more difficult moments that my husband and I, like if I'm going through a difficult moment, he can see that and sort of rise up to that and be like, oh, like, okay, she's having a difficult moment. I'm going to sort of take over in that situation or help her find this place of peace for her. And I think we have that opportunity with our kids too, to say like, oh, they're going through something, whether it's discipline wise or just a change, growth, that we can see, oh, like they need my extra support here to bring peace to this family, because maybe this member is kind of riling things up a little more than the others. And so recognizing that they maybe need more of our time, or maybe they just need some more space. You know, I know in a bigger family, sometimes it's just a child that needs some space or whatever it is, but being able to just kind of know your family members so deeply that you can see where they're headed or what they're feeling or experiencing, and sort of help them seek peace.
And I think too, having kids, mine, you know, my oldest is about 11, and then going down from there to newborn, when this is shared with people, that thinking about, I think when all of my kids were younger, I kind of felt like, well, all of the crazy will kind of die down. But knowing even where my mom is now with us, that I'm the oldest of 4, and we all still have things going on in our lives, and her heart is still very much in tune with ours, and connects with ours and reaches out to ours and cares for it. And now it's just, I mean, now she has all 4 of us and our spouses and the grandchildren. Yeah. So it's like there's even more people to love into and to serve in all of the various circumstances. Yeah. So it's never going to stop. And I kind of think that's one of the things that a lot of times I think like, well, when things slow down,
Yep.
but like, if this was a year of slowdown, then like, I don't know what was.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that we can't just use that excuse of saying, well, when things slow down, then we're going to whatever. But we have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
So what things do you see certain things in your homes or in your lives, or just in our culture in general, that are like some key thieves of peace? Because I think for me, if I can identify what are some of the things that are stealing my peace, then that helps me to be on guard for them. Because I know one of them for us is like busyness. When I allow myself, because I love saying yes to things. We were talking about being introverted or extroverted before this conversation started. And I am very much more extroverted, and I love saying yes to things and going to places and being with people. But then when I've said yes to things 7 days a week, then our house never got picked up, and I'm tired, and my kids are tired, and it's just been too much that it steals our peace. And this year has really taught me to really guard my yeses and to save the yeses for the best things, and sometimes to choose to say yes to slowness. Like, I'm not going to do that because we are going to be at home. So for me, it's busyness. What are some of the stealers of peace that you see?
I think, I think I relate really well to the busyness thing. So that can definitely be something. Practically, having my dishes overflowing, that is a stealer of all, of all of the peace, for sure. But then I also think when I just allow myself in that busy to not have any of that still time. I think that really is something that really just robs it all away. So
for sure.
And not knowing kind of what, I think I've gone through times where I don't know what recharges me. And so, and not and so I'm seeking after a bunch of other things, but none of them recharge me. And so then at the end of doing all of these things, I'm like, oh, now I feel even more exhausted. And I thought that these things would help, and realizing that they're not helping. So I think really taking time to figure out for myself, what does recharge look like? Versus my husband has a very different way of recharging.
Yeah. One of the things I found that really helps me with that, of even scheduling it in, and if I don't schedule it in, it doesn't happen, but is some time in the morning to be still. And it sometimes does incorporate a child. I've been reading this book, and I've been loving it. It's called Mom Heart Moments, and it's by Sally Clarkson. I love everything Sally Clarkson does. Her work is just gold. I think everyone would love all of her books. But this one I've loved because they're daily devotions for life-giving motherhood, and they're short, which has really helped me because during this season where I don't feel like I have a long time to give right now, but I have little snippets to give, even if it means that a child comes in and joins me on my lap partway through, that's okay.
Yeah.
And one of my kids even asked the other day, why do you do this every morning? And I said, well, it's important for my heart because it prepares my heart to be a good mom for you. Because if I just get up and get going and start doing things, then I'm not ready to be a nice person. I'm not ready to be a nice mom. I'm not ready to be a nice wife. So I have to slow down and get my heart in a place where it's prepared to love people well. And she said, well, that's sure helpful that I'm here with you then so you can start practicing. I'm so glad that your heart knows that I love having you with me, even if it's during my brief moment. It was so sweet. I said, yes, that is perfect practice for me.
Yeah.
But what do you see as some of the thieves of peace stealers?
Mine is definitely, I'm a planned person. So I like things, not necessarily moment by moment planned, but I know what we're doing today and tomorrow and then all of those things. So when that gets disrupted, it's really hard for me to change. And so having, even right now, like living in a situation where we don't fully have control of everything we're doing, having random things sprung on me or things that I just wasn't expecting, not having control. And that's really what it comes down to, is just recognizing like I do not control the situation. And I need to accept that. And that is what I'm learning helps, when I can recognize that I'm losing my control, that I can realize like I'm not supposed to have control of this, that I don't have peace because I'm not supposed to have control of this. And so accepting that and sort of just releasing it and letting that go, that this is how the day is going to go. And I can choose gratitude for the things that are happening that are good. And I can choose joy and choose peace in all of those things.
Okay, well, that's a perfect transition because I was actually just thinking about how our focus really is what sets our tone. And so whether it's through like starting with time with a devotion book or in prayer or something to get your heart and mind in the right place in the morning, to a place of peace, it's really all perspective. Right. So how do you keep your perspective in a place of joy and peace and, truth and all of that through the day, especially in a time of such where there's just been so much turmoil and even just in the day-to-day of mothering. I mean, how easy is it to so quickly go to a place of like, I'm a failure and I'm not doing anything right. And this child's, I don't know what I did to ruin this. I thought I was doing a good job. Yeah. And just so much self-doubt that can creep in. So how do you help keep that perspective like where it should be, I guess?
Yeah. For me, I do have my own time in the morning, but I think halfway through the day or even 3/4 through the day, I'll start to forget that I had that time. It's been such a long day. You feel like one day's turned into 12 and you're like, but wait, that's not recharging me anymore. Gratefulness has been something in our most difficult seasons, just stopping and being grateful. Like, what do I have to be grateful for? My kids are healthy. Our marriage is doing well. We have family. We have food. My husband has a job. So things like that. And a phrase that always pops in my head is even if not. So like, even if my kids are not healthy and my marriage is struggling and all of these things, as a Christian, I know that I have the hope of heaven. And so at the end of that, I believe that we have the hope of that at the very end, even if all of these things go horribly wrong, to remind myself that like, we're all doing all of these things for a greater picture. And that this isn't just for today. Like I'm living for a long-term picture rather than just for this moment. So I think those are the mental things. I think physically, if I can just get outside and get some sunshine on my skin, some fresh air, even if it just means that my kid's like running around in the backyard and I can just feel the sun and hear the birds. I think that nature just, for me, it shows me that I'm just such a small portion of everything going on in the world. And that really what's happening when, the baby spilled Cheerios everywhere and the kids are climbing everywhere and all these things, like in the scheme of things, like, there is a creator that has created all of this. And it just gives me that sense of peace that like, this is just a small bit of such a large picture. You're just a small piece in all of that. So that's I think the more tangible thing that I know if I can just get myself outside, even if it's just the front yard, it's going to help me regroup and find that peace.
Yeah, I really like that. I like your idea about the gratefulness too. Like, what do I have to be thankful for? There's so many things to be thankful for always. And it's a choice. You can choose. Like, am I going to focus on the things I'm thankful for? Yeah. There's that movie. I don't know if you guys watched Pollyanna when you were kids. Oh my goodness, guys, you need to watch Pollyanna. There's an old Disney movie of it. And I know there's a book too, but I watched the movie. But she plays this game called the Glad Game, where she always tries to find, there's always got to be something glad that you can be glad about. And it's a choice. And I think that it doesn't mean that you're ignoring the negative things or giving less like value or weight to them, right? But just putting it in perspective. It's all the lens that you see it through. And I think that when we, even a moment of, discipline challenges, rather than saying, this is so challenging, to say either, I'm so thankful that I have this moment to slow down and be your mom and train you because that's my job. Yeah. Or to say, I know my mom used to say that she would pray that we would get caught when we were doing things, to say, you know what, rather than being so shocked that this child did whatever they did, to say, I'm so thankful that it was here or that I found out about it so that I can address it and be the parent. And that's just such a different, it's all perspective.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, definitely.
What do you think, Steph?
I feel like the thing that just came to mind was like an example in a similar idea of like the practical, like where there's so many times that practically in your day-to-day life that things are kind of chaotic and they're not going the way that you think. So for me, like an example of that would be my oldest really struggles with nightmares. Like it's really, really bad. And just thinking my natural response, right? When he comes into bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm so tired, is to be like, okay, I love you. Go back to bed. And just after days and days and days of them, that's not, I would be missing out on the opportunity to love him and to train him well. And so instead we take the time together to say, you know what, I've struggled with fear in my life before, but I can tell you about something that can totally defeat all of that fear. And let me tell you all about it. And we take the time for us to go over scripture together and to pray together and to refocus his mind and his heart on those things. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, those things, that's where our focus is. And just intentionally spending that time instead of saying, you know what, I'm too tired. Like, you need to just go back to bed. It'll all be better. And just thinking like, for me, this is a chance to train him as to say, you don't have to live in fear. Like, fearful things will come up, but it doesn't have to be where your perspective stays. So you can see that there's something on the other side of this. And for our family, we decided around New Year's a couple of years ago to make a Gratefulness Chair. And every time that we came up with something that we felt like we could be grateful for, we threw it in the jar. And at the end of the year, we went back through and said, do you remember? Do you remember when we did? And it was like something that we all looked forward to. And it actually cultivated thankfulness and gratefulness in our house. And I just think like those kinds of things just totally set the tone and the mood, like that thermostat. And then for me, when I'm feeling like you were saying, like I have my morning time, but when that is kind of wearing off, like for me, just singing music in my house is like one of those things that just totally lifts me from where I was to where like I want to be.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's that verse in the Bible that talks about, I kind of think like whatever is. Yeah. And it goes through the things and it talks about whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And if we're thinking on those things and filling our minds and hearts with those things, then it's almost like there's not room for the other things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And when I realize sometimes that my mind is spinning, and I see it in different ways. Like I see it in me when I start getting really nitpicky about things. Like I'll start getting really nitpicky with my kids or with my husband or even about our home. And just like, okay, everything needs to be picked up and everything needs to be clean and in its space right now. But that external thing that's happening is really just a reflection of what's going on in my heart. And having to slow down to say, okay, what is it that I've been thinking on? And I don't know, that might be kind of an interesting way to go about a resolution of peace, is even thinking maybe each month I focus on a different one, focusing on whatever is true. And then 1 month focusing on whatever is noble, and then whatever is right for a month or something like that. Just as a moment, what am I filling myself with? How am I seeing, what lenses am I seeing through? So another thing I was kind of thinking about with this topic is that we don't have power over so much. And I think that's one of the things, the lack of control. That's, you were talking about, Alicia. I think that that's where a lot of the lack of peace stirs from, is we have such a false sense of control that we think, I mean, if ever there was a year to realize we didn't have control, like this was the year. Goodness gracious, so many things that we just don't have any control over. And realizing, once we realize that, I think there's kind of freedom in that.
Yes.
Don't you?
Yeah.
That we don't have to be able to do everything. So what do you think are some of the tangible tools that we can use to kind of keep our peace in place? I know you mentioned going outside. And I think that definitely is one too. One of the things that we do is, or that I do, is we have a quiet time every afternoon. And even my kids who are older, and we did this some growing up too, it's when we did our reading on our own. And we would read by ourselves in our room, whatever our book was for that time. And it's funny, it never even dawned on me when I was a child and I was doing my independent reading in my room that was a time for my mom to have any space. Like I wasn't thinking about her. I was just thinking about what I was doing. But that's something for me that during that like halfway point in the day or 3/4 of the way really helps to recharge me. And it has to be practiced. Like my kids had to learn, how do we have a quiet time? What do we do? And for ours, we give them either a book that they can pick, a book or something to do. For our younger ones, they have like a maze book or a dot-to-dot book or books that they can look at, or even a book on tape that they could listen to. And that's worked really well and just really helped me keep me in a place of peace. So what about you? What protective spaces have you put up that kind of help guard you or help lead you in that way?
Well, I do a quiet time every morning, and I think that really helps to make sure that I'm starting out the day.
So what does that mean for you, a quiet time?
So for me personally, that means having time with my Bible, and then having time with a candle and a cup of coffee. And those are mine.
Okay, tell about your candle tool, because your candle serves a purpose aside from just being beautiful.
Yeah, so I have a candle on the table. My boys have always been early risers. And I'm an early riser too, but I don't think anyone can ever beat them. And so I feel like I set my alarm around 6 or 6:30, and I wake up. And my boys are now old enough that they we have a little tool in their room to tell them when they are allowed to go ahead and come on out for the day. Because if, like I said, when they wake up, they would be up way too early for the rest of the household. So they have a tool to help them. But before we had that tool, it was really helpful to have the candle. And the candle would essentially sit on the table. And the boys knew that if it was lit, it meant that it was my quiet time. And that meant that they were allowed to also come out and participate if they could be quiet. But and so they would go and get a coloring book and crayons, and they would color at the table. And for two extremely busy, loud boys, they were very calm and quiet in that moment. And for my little one who's more introverted, I think it was really great time for him. For my extroverted one, he could see that there was joy just even in sitting with people. It didn't always have to be busy, big activity. another thing for me is I love walking. And like I put on a podcast and I just go for a walk around my neighborhood for, 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So maybe I'll do that in the morning. My husband happens to be at home right now, so it works out okay. But it's like, you can kind of come up with maybe times to do that just to reset and recharge in a way that's not my brain having to necessarily enact it, but it's what's being put in that way for me to just enjoy, to sit in.
Yeah.
I love that candle idea. That's so great.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, I love that.
Well, and Alicia, you talked about purposefully choosing peace. Like that you guys kind of had a point where you said, okay, we're going to make this a thing. Yeah. What advice would you give for a mom who said, I really want to choose peace this year in a new way in our home? Like what hope would you give to her?
I think like what you're talking about, the lens, it's all of this is going on, and it's so easy for us to get our minds on the chaos and this is happening and that's happening, but to really see where is that moment. If it means you need to wake up a little earlier, you go to bed a little later. And also I think we have these phones that are in our hands all the time. And am I just choosing in those, maybe I only get 10 minutes, but maybe in those 10 minutes, am I choosing to just go scroll on my phone, or am I doing something that's going to recharge me? And so I think it really is just how we're framing our minds, what we're thinking on. Are we taking those minutes to do something, whether it's nature or reading or listening to music? For me, it's actually quiet. Like if I get a chance to even just go to the grocery store, like there's no music on at all. I'm just like, like I just have silence. So I think deciding like what that is for you and seeking it out, like, the quiet time, like your kids having a quiet time, like it's not just going to happen. Like it's not going to happen for any of us. Like you have to choose, like, this is now quiet time. And I think your kids need to know too, like mommy needs this quiet time. Like you guys, I love you, but I need like just a minute. And so that way when they're older too, that they get to realize like that it's okay for me to need my peace. So
I was thinking that for older kids too, that's also training them. Yeah. Like your junior hires, your high schoolers, like that's training them to be a healthy adult.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, to find a space and a time and like a way of recharging, and I think that's really important. Yeah. So, no, that's a really good thought, Alicia.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you were saying too about like seeking after it, that no one's going to do it for us.
Right.
No one else is going to say. Like,
in fact, our automatic response will be to go to the other side of things.
Right.
Our automatic response, at least for me, has been fear and worry before I decided like, my response is going to be to choose peace. So, and to set it up as like, this is a place of peace.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. I know that this has been a crazy year, and I think there's no better way to wrap up a year than focusing on going in a new, refreshed way in the year to come. So I know that will be an encouragement to some moms, and I just so appreciate you being here. So
thanks for having us.
If someone wants to find you or follow you somewhere, Alicia, where can they look for you?
The best place is probably on Instagram. It's simply _Alicia on Instagram.
Perfect. And follow along with what you've got going on there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If you've joined me in this space for much time at all, you've probably realized that our conversations do not focus on the madness happening in the world around us. Though I may not call attention to current events and discuss politics, it isn't because it hasn't affected me or my family. Trust me, living in Southern California as a Christian woman and a wife of a husband in law enforcement, going through a pregnancy and birth during months of quarantine, all while trying to protect the hearts and minds of my 4 children, it has been anything but an easy year. If you have experienced deep emotional burdens, if you've had to fight off depression in your home, if you've cried over the worldview differences of those you deeply care for, if you've had financial stress, I am right there with you. After all the turmoil and tragedy of the last year, our hearts and our families are wounded and scarred. And while we may not be able to change the craziness of the world around us, we can directly impact what happens within the walls of our home. We can choose to create an atmosphere of peace, hope, and joy for our family. Our New Year's resolutions should look quite different this year. I believe that the most meaningful resolutions we can make are those that bring peace, comfort, and healing in our home. Your New Year's resolutions of peace starts by remembering God's word and His promises that in this world we will have trouble. But we can have a peace that surpasses all understanding because we know that He has overcome the world Hold on to that truth.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any of our weekly conversations. And check out our show notes below, where I have links to the resources mentioned on the podcast. I release a new podcast every Monday and additional content at seekholyliving.com, including a video of this conversation and a deeper dive into all things mom. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Seek Holy Living for more fun and conversation. If this was an encouragement to you, please share it with your friends.
And join us next week as we kick off a brand new year.